You got mail.
Do you remember the 90s?
Come on, Uncle Phil, this is the 90s, man.
Man, it's the 90s. It's hammer time. Come on.
It's the 90s, remember? Microchips, microwaves, faxes, earphones.
Ma, it's the 90s. You can call it what it is.
Yada, yada, yada.
I can be anything I want to be. It's the 90s.
What, are you nuts? This is the 90s. We're gonna sue you.
Wake up and smell the 90s.
So what did we just watch?
We watched the scene from Captain Marvel, which I have not seen, so I have no context for that scene. Our daughter's seen it.
Of course she has.
But are we talking about Blockbuster Video?
We sure are.
Yeah, because she fell down and she crashed into a Blockbuster Video, because that film is set in the 90s.
The 90s.
And you didn't even have to say it out loud. You just knew because it was Blockbuster.
Are you trying to tell me that there was good cinematic language going on in a Marvel movie? The show don't tell?
There might have been.
It better be when it costs $200 million to make one of them.
There might have been, yeah. So the reason why it is close to my heart is because I worked for Blockbuster for 2 years between 1999 and 2001. So,
really?
Yeah.
Am I supposed to act surprised like I don't know this? Or
Do it again.
So,
Act surprised.
wow, really? You worked at a Blockbuster?
I sure did. In Canada.
Well, yeah, we got to wait to see what the differences are there.
I'll be there. I'll be there.
Just call my name.
I'll be there.
At Blockbuster stores across Canada, you'll find more copies of new releases that are guaranteed to be there, or they're free.
Well, it's good to know you had the same catchphrase as us.
Yes. But that commercial was 1999 Canada. So that was very much the time period that I worked there.
It feels very Canadian. It's just so wholesome
Polite.
and wonderful, and it's such lovely music. It's a throwback. Our Blockbuster videos were just like some dude coming in who was like jacked up on energy drinks and Mountain Dew, trying to find like copies of Jerry Maguire, like a Tasmanian devil.
So what is your experience with Blockbuster?
It was the first time that I got a car. I got my learner's permit. One of the first places I went to Blockbuster Video and got myself a membership. That was freedom to me, to be able to rent movies and to be able to go to the movie theater.
Yeah, that's freedom for someone who went to film school for sure.
Yeah. No surprise if you know me. Since I had the wonderful experience having a Blockbuster in America, but Blockbusters in America were franchised.
They were in Canada too.
Okay, but I don't know. My experience is that in Florida, where I grew up, they were able to create their own categories and they were able to kind of specialize the store.
That was the main premise of Blockbuster that kept it sort of separate from other, because there were other video rental stores. They did specialize the categories based on demographics of the individual store. They didn't send the same amount of the same films to every store. They were different depending on where you lived. And of course, they had the family-friendly policy of no pornography. There was no
beaded curtain.
There was no beaded curtain, no place for gentlemen to go.
I remember that I had to go to a specific mom and pop store to get things like Eraserhead and whatever
Really?
Japanese, to get any like Japanese animations like Akira, things like that. Those things were too hot for Blockbuster.
Yeah. Well, before we get really into Blockbuster, I think we should talk about sort of how movies were consumed from the very beginning. I mean, obviously at first it was just in theaters and nobody thought those films would be seen again. That's why so many of them are lost, right? I mean, that's part of the reason also.
Well,
the fact that they like could burn out pretty easily.
There was television and eventually
Not at first.
There was not at first. No,
No,
you're talking
at-
about
I want to go way
back.
So just to get the whole idea of like how people watched movies, you know, eventually we got to TV and
Back in the heyday of the talkies.
yeah, they eventually started playing on TV, right? If you could catch them.
They would play them overnight specifically lots of times.
And then HBO, called Max now, but before called Home Box Office, was four movies.
That was a novelty. It was a novelty to have those films so quickly out of the theaters,
available to watch for a premium cable price,
but commercial free and unedited.
That's true.
Because that was a thing you weren't getting on television.
No, and you were getting them fairly quick. And then, of course, there was the fight for supremacy when it came to Beta and VHS.
Yes, the format wars. It was the original format war.
Yeah,
because Beta is such a better format. But I remember even the machines were thousands of dollars when they first came out.
The Beta machines.
The Beta machines.
Yeah, the VHS machines were pretty expensive too. I mean,
They were, but they were always focused at consumer. Whereas Beta was always a premium. It was a premium format, the same way that Laserdisc was in the next generation.
Well, VHS was fairly premium too. At first, the tapes were like $75 to $100 a piece.
Oh, I remember.
Because they did the math on it and they were like, well, if we're charging $8 for people to see a movie, we're not going to charge $10 for them and their 12 friends to see the same movie at their house. So they bumped the prices up so that it was kind of an unfeasible cost for a single film. And that's why there are video rental stores.
Well, it wasn't consumer pricing, it was retail pricing.
It was retail pricing, yeah.
And that's why if you lost your video, you would have to pay the retail price, which I'm sure with some type of bump up as well. I remember sometimes they'd threaten you at like $80, $90.
Yeah. The studios were fighting against the video stores having physical ownership of it. They wanted a residual for every rental.
A big issue was piracy, duplication.
Right, yeah.
And I remember being able, the minute that VHS came out as a retail format, I would go to the flea market and there would be an enormous amount of bootleg VHSs that you would just go and buy, and they'd be a couple dollars, out of the back of some guy's trunk.
I remember one Christmas, my sister sent me a gift of probably a dozen, maybe 20 films that she had just duplicated and given and just sent them to me. Because they were ones that I wanted, ones that I liked. And I remember a couple specific dips in audio from those tapes that those VHS tapes that I played over and over and over again, that now when I watch that film on DVD, I'm waiting for it. I know exactly when it's supposed to happen. And it doesn't happen because it's a DVD. And speaking of DVD, that was sort of where I came in. I started working at the very, very tail end of VHS, and I was there for the transition. I remember I was so excited because I had my first DVD player in college, and I wanted more DVDs to watch. And I had like a handful of them at the time. And so I was like, so are we starting DVD this week? Are we starting DVD next week? Did we get any? Are we stocking? When is this happening?
And that is because you got, as a person who worked there, what privilege did you get?
Well, I got basically infinite rentals. And we got to rent prior to the film's release. DVDs movies, whether VHS or DVD, came out on Tuesdays. Theatrical always come out on Fridays for the weekend. Rental videos always came out on Tuesdays. So I don't remember the day of the week that we received them, maybe Friday. And then I think we had to process them. We had to make the packaging for it and scan them in.
This is the inside dirt that I want to hear. I want to hear about the blue polos. I want to hear about the training videos, the lunchrooms, everything. I want to know all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes.
I don't remember any training videos. I don't think they trained us much. And the staff room was as disgusting as you would expect it to be. But so we processed the videos, and we had to shrink wrap the actual DVD so that they could sit in front of the disc holding,
So walk me through this. You guys had to do this overnight after hours?
No, we would just do it like during quiet time, like when we had time, usually Mondays.
And you'd get a large case of
we get deliveries
of a movie.
Multiple.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. the big movies, we would obviously, as you could tell from that commercial, we would have many, many, many copies, probably, as many as 60 or 70 copies of some of the bigger films. And then we'd have, 4 or 5 of the lesser successful, but still with popular actors. And then you get like one or 2 copies of your foreign films or your indie films or things that they decided would not be popular in your location. My location was in it was not an affluent area. It was quite near the university that I went to, but it also had a lot of apartment buildings. So we had a lot of theft at that store, which is not surprising for the demographic.
Did you witness any theft? How do you get one of those giant boxes out of the? Because there's metal detectors too, right? When you walk through, would go off.
I mean, to a certain extent. When it was DVDs are slim, and all we had was those little strip stickers.
You just snip it right off, yeah.
Rip it off. So yeah, it wasn't that hard. We made an effort, at least with the games, to keep them behind the shelves.
Oh, that's right. Another thing, you had games.
We had games. We had all the discs were scratched to hell. The Nintendo games survived fairly well because they were in cartridges. But yeah, they were just in drawers behind the counter, and they easily got stolen too. I mean, there's irate customers who are like, "But it's on the shelf. Why don't you have it?" Well, shit happens. Like no, we couldn't find it. They tried at first to put DVDs behind the shelves because they thought that it would be a high theft, and there just wasn't the capacity or like the manpower to keep the DVDs behind the counter. So yeah, there's a lot of theft. Oh, one fun thing about Blockbuster is inventory. So the store closes at midnight, which means we don't get to start inventory until after we close. So we have to do all of the closing things with the money and with the returns and stuff like that. And then we would get these giant scanning machines, and we would have to, the entire staff had to stay, usually until 3 or 4 in the morning, and we would just scan every single item, section by section. And then after sort of the first round, the manager would print out what was missing. And then we had to, with a paper and pen, go look for those items to verify that they were gone. And sometimes we would find them in like weird places, or like, oops, we forgot the section or whatever. But inventory was like crazy. I mean, it was kind of fun. They usually fed us, and we had music playing, and it was pretty chill. And I don't think Blockbuster ever did Laserdiscs.
Blockbuster never did do Laserdisc. We had a mom and pop place in Florida that did Laserdiscs.
Yeah. I don't even remember the timing of Laserdiscs. Like, what did it come between?
It was early 90s up until 96, 97. But what about the whole rewinding situation? How did you have to? Did you have like just this? Yeah, but did you have this just gigantic bay of rewinders, or an industrial rewinder or something?
Not gigantic. We had about 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah.
And they were plugged into the wall. They were near the drop-off place. So at the beginning of the shift, we would get last night's returns, and we would have to open every single one, verify that they are the correct title, verify that like the barcode of the case matches the barcode of the disc or the tape. And if it was a VHS tape and it wasn't rewound, we had to rewind it. So we would go through one by one. And then they'd be put on a side counter once they were rewound or and looked at. And then you'd take a stack of them. You would organize them on the counter alphabetically so you could go around the store and not just, walk back and forth all over the place. You wanted to do it in an efficient manner. So you would either do, I believe that they had, I think that they had the cases color coded for new releases versus their general inside stock, because the new releases were all around the outside of the store. And then the miscellaneous stuff was in sections inside the store.
What was the whole saying was be kind, rewind. Mm-hmm. What was the percentage of people that actually did send them back rewound?
I mean, like 50-50 probably. We did a lot of rewinding, and those machines really got used. They were industrial. They weren't like a random tape that you would, or a random rewinding thing that you would buy at
They weren't
Best
novelty like the ones you'd have at your house that look like cars or
No.
like...
Not at all. And then, of course, what killed Blockbuster?
Netflix.
Pretty much. So it did try and compete when Netflix became more dominant. They did have a
Mail order.
mail order system, and they went to a system where I believe you could drop them off at any location. And then they had a thing that was like a monthly subscription where you would pay a monthly subscription. You could have unlimited rentals, and that killed their bottom line. They lost so much money on that.
This guy right here, it was the equivalent of Movie Pass. You remember Movie Pass, where the minute they did that, I just went, my dreams have come true, and they limit it that I think you could only take out 4 at a time.
Yeah.
But I was doing 4 movies a day. There was a summer where I just burned through them. And the best thing about it is that not only could you get unlimited in the store, you could also piggyback that or bundle it with the mail order as well.
Yeah.
And so I did that for a bit because Netflix wasn't. It wasn't in Fort Myers. You weren't going to be getting a Netflix. It took days. It took weeks to get something out there. There wasn't the infrastructure yet that it was, but they had a terrible selection.
Yeah. I remember Netflix had a much better selection for their mail order stuff by a long shot. So yeah, let's just kind of talk about what the experience of going to Blockbuster was. It was something that you would maybe do with your... So I never went to Blockbuster before I worked at Blockbuster because my parents were cheap. And so we wouldn't go. But a lot of other people would do like a Friday night or Saturday night thing, go to Blockbuster, have the kids pick a movie, have the adults pick a movie. They always had snacks, a good selection of snacks at the store.
Impulse buys,
yeah. But easily accessible. And I think that was part of the appeal. What I liked about working there is that I was going to film school at the time. And so, yeah, obviously I got to watch as much as I wanted to, but also I got to talk to people and influence people and try and steer them in certain directions. And I was a giant snob, not as much as you, but I was quite a snob. And I remember around this time there was a transition from a 4:3 format to 16:9. All of the TVs weren't widescreen back then, right? They were almost square. And so, but there was a movement towards having movies available in their original aspect ratio.
window box, letterboxed.
Yeah. So there would be black bars on the top and bottom in order to have the whole width show on a square TV. And so I remember many, many times, I believe it was Titanic, that it was such a big movie. 1997, I worked at a movie theater when it came out, and I worked at a Blockbuster when it came out on video. So we had so many of them, but some of them were widescreen. And it was on the label, but people didn't understand. And so they would come back and they would complain. And so on more than one occasion, I drew out a little diagram that would show, look, this is a square screen. This is a rectangle movie. In order to see a rectangle movie on a square screen, you need to have placeholders, the black bars.
For the negative space. Yeah.
For the negative space. Or, and then I explained pan and scan, where it would just robotically go back and forth across the screen.
Redirecting it.
Redirecting the film, and often cutting off characters, cutting off portion, like visual clues in the background, stuff like that. Now, can you explain to our fine, possibly young audience how a VCR worked?
Well, I mean, it's basically just like a DVD player. You plug it into your television. Sometimes you had to, very early on, you had to have what is known as the Channel 3 input in your auxiliary.
This is where I'm going for.
You had to go,
Explain this.
So you had to take a
It's weird.
You had to take a coaxial cable and you had to put it in, not in what you consider your RCAs, but you take your coaxial cable and you plug it into your VCR and plug it into your television. And then you had to put it on Channel 3.
Mm-hmm. Always Channel 3.
Yeah, Channel 3 was the standard, I guess, in the industry. And Channel 3 would always, if there was some other input that was detected, it would patch that through and you could watch it. And then you could watch your VHS.
Yeah.
It would play through.
Yeah.
And depending if you had the way you could tell most of the time between a good and a high quality and just a whatever VHS player was, they had top loaders or they had
Were those
ones,
the expensive ones?
those were the expensive ones. Yeah.
I'd never had one of those.
Yeah. Top loaders were almost all Betamax ones were top loading and it's less wear and tear and just and all this stuff going on. There's no carriage that can get stuck. But that's how you could always tell if some kid was the rich kid if he had a top loader.
Oh yeah.
And if a little later on they had the ones where you could have the two decks that were built into
For
one
dubbing.
unit, so you could dub them. So you could put a blank one in one side, put your movie in the other, and it would automatically dub it on the other side.
Now, can you talk about how we used to program VCRs to record television programs?
Well, the problem was it was different for every single VCR.
Yeah.
But it had
And our parents could never figure it out.
Well, parents could never figure it out. Sometimes I could never honestly figure it out, but you had to know if. So originally, it was just you set the clock on your VHS player, and you grab your remote, and an on-screen display would come up on the menu, and it looked like an Atari. It was just like blue or black and white with big blocky letters, and you would just sit there and you would say, "I want Channel 3 at 4 a.m. and I want it to record from 4:30 to 2:30 or for a duration."
Yeah.
And then you do that, and then you have to remember to turn off the VCR.
Yeah, the VCR had to be default off.
It had to be default off, and just like an alarm clock, magically at the time you set it, say 4:30 a.m.,
it should go on.
It should turn on. If someone else is using it, it would
won't.
not work.
Yep.
So,
If someone leaves the wrong tape in, it will not work either. Oh, because on tapes, there was a tiny little square
it was the write protection tab.
that was either there or not there.
Yeah, and there's a write protection tab. So if you recorded something, you didn't want somebody to just accidentally hit record or record over it, you would actually have to, nowadays, you would have something, say, on a thumb drive or something, or on a micro SD card. You could unlock it or lock it. This was a decision on VHS. This was a decision that you had to make and stick with for pretty much forever, unless you just put a piece of
Not
tape
true.
over. Just put a piece of tape over it. But still, the tape thing sometimes didn't work after a while. It would mess things up because it would get into the machine. But you'd actually have to take a screwdriver or your fingernail or something, and not just pull it off, and literally break it.
Yeah.
You would have to break the tape. You'd have to
plastic.
crack it off.
Yeah.
There wasn't even a score line or anything. So you actually, there's lots of times where it would get stuck in the tape. It would go back up in it, depending on the quality of the tape.
Yeah.
It was nonsense. It was a Wild West.
It was Wild
These
West.
things were not, VHS was not a format that was made to be archival to last
Not at
generations. It was utterly and completely disposable.
Yeah, totally. But you could reuse your tapes if you were done with the record that you wanted to save so badly and you outgrew it or didn't care anymore. You could put a piece of tape over it and start recording.
I
over
dare
it
say
again.
that VHS in general, the reason why VHS was so popular, not even talking about beta or VHS or whatever, just the tape VHS formats, because it was so easy to understand. You put it in, you hit play, you
Well, it was
rewind,
like
you
a
fast
cassette.
forward.
It was like a musical cassette, but with pictures.
But it almost always worked. And even
Yeah.
though you look back on it now at the quality of it, and literally every time you watch it, you're taking another you're ruining it just a
Yeah.
little bit more because it's a physical
and tear,
format,
yeah.
a wear and tear on it, especially if you're recording. 'Cause it's, and God forbid you had speakers or anything near your VHS collection. The thing is, this is magnetic tape. Speakers are just a giant magnet.
Yeah.
And so I saw so many people that I would come into their house
Yeah.
and they would put them on top of their speakers, which were on either side of their television.
Yeah.
And they would literally bulk erase over time, if not instantly, their entire collections of VHS.
Well, but sometimes with cassettes that you would record on over and over again, you'd get little bits of bleed through too.
Well, see, that was the fun part. That was kind of the fun part, is that no matter what if you were recording over something else, the minute you stopped, you got like the fuzziness on the radio in between the dials. You'd see static, you'd see breakup, and then it would instantly kind of morph into what was already on the tape. And it became this like weird
It is a really
remix.
cool looking aesthetic.
It's a very, well, there's a
It's
reason.
nostalgic.
Yeah. There's a reason now that like one of the biggest effects you can have now is like the VHS look.
Yeah.
Where they add the tracking lines.
Yep.
And the RGB separation, where you see like this kind of ghosting around everything, and the different colors kind of pull apart and don't quite align very well. I mean, there's a nostalgia for it, for sure. And Blockbuster is a big part of that.
Yeah.
With me, my family never rented them. It was something that I did for myself when
Yeah.
I wanted to, because it was something that it was freedom.
Yeah.
I had access to, the library at the time had some good VHS and stuff, because that was another thing. The public library had a big
And still
library of
do.
stuff, and still do, but you still had to go to the library. The Blockbuster is a little more rock and roll.
It was a little bit more rock and roll. It was a little more social. It was a little bit more, I left the house to do a thing.
So how long do you think the average customer took to choose a movie?
Oh, geez. I mean, I think some came in knowing exactly what they wanted. They wanted the release of the week that came out. And some people hung around for a long time.
Because when I went there, now everybody says it's the endless scroll.
Yeah.
That they'll spend
We had
more
an endless scroll back then,
There was
too.
an endless scroll, but you had to go to the physical place. I would go to, it was indecision.
Yeah.
It like sweats.
Yeah.
Of like, I can only get 2 of these, and they had to be back by Sunday night.
Yeah. I mean, that was the beauty of working there, is that I didn't have to be careful. It didn't matter if I liked it. I would come home, because I think we could take out 10 at a time.
Holy.
Yeah. Like we couldn't have more than 10 at a time. But so I would sometimes go home with 6 or 7. I lived with two other girls. And they mostly got the benefit of it because I worked a lot and I was going to school full time. So that was the beginning of me passing out at every opportunity while watching a film.
Yeah, I had the same thing when I was in film school. I had 2 friends that I buddied up to, and not because of this, but it just turned out that my buddy, one of them worked at a Blockbuster and one of them was a bartender.
Yeah.
So I could always get drinks for free and I could always get movies for free.
I did not have quite the forethought because my roommates didn't do much for me. But I provided lots of movies for them for 2 full years.
All right. So what is your getting back to the actual you
Yeah.
your age, paint the picture, Blockbuster in Canada?
I mean, I don't think it was really that much different in Canada. It was the same experience.
But what
The same.
Everyone who works at one of their first jobs or at a job when they're younger has some war stories. Do you have at least a war story?
I don't know that I have a war story. I remember being understaffed pretty frequently on Friday and Saturday nights, and the line being to the back of the store.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty common.
Yeah. And like I still am at work, I was very fast, and they liked that. But I also worked accurately. I didn't screw up a lot.
Frequent customers?
I didn't have any people that I personally knew. I'm sure there were repeat customers. We lived in a pretty densely populated area. But I have a little bit of a funny story that you have heard, but it's still pretty amusing. So I went to school not in my hometown. So one time, my parents came to pick me up to go home for Christmas. And it was my last shift, which ended at like 12:30. They were sitting in the parking lot of the Blockbuster waiting for me to be finished so we could go home. And they see paper flying around the neighborhood. And they get out and they go to where the garbage was kept. I don't think it was specifically a dumpster, but it was at the side of the building. And they found a bunch of wrapping paper just flying around. And it was like clean. And I guess it had been used for decoration inside the store. And maybe they had extra or whatever. So my parents picked it up and took it home and used it to wrap presents.
Was this branded Blockbuster? Like, did it have
did not
logos or VHS tapes or things on it?
I think it was the colors.
Okay.
I think it might have been the blue and the yellow. I can't remember entirely. Except for the fact that not 2 years ago, my mother was coming to visit us. And she said, "Do you want me to bring that Blockbuster paper that I still have?"
So this part I don't know. She still has
She
remnants?
still has some. Yeah. She's not a hoarder either. She's just frugal. She just keeps things.
Are we getting this in the inheritance?
We might. Yeah. We'll find it when we have to clean up her apartment one day.
It'll probably shatter the minute you try to make a crease on it of any sort.
I don't know. I'm sure it's just yellowed and crazy. But yeah, they took Blockbuster wrapping paper and still had it 25 years later.
Wow, what a difference. I tell you.
It's the generation, right?
Did you have that? Did you have that one? The Blockbuster, wow, what a difference.
That sounds familiar. Yeah. I think we had a lot of the same branding as you. So let's talk about what remains of Blockbuster.
So we're now in the present
day Blockbuster. So almost all of the stores have closed over the years. Their peak was thousands and thousands of stores all over North America, and I think internationally too. Netflix definitely killed them. There was some mismanagement of funds, blah, 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 blah.
Well, the fact that people didn't want to go out and actually go to a physical place to get things.
Because they didn't have to, because streaming became popular.
Yeah.
There is still one Blockbuster in Bend, Oregon.
Bend,
Oregon. And there's a whole documentary about it.
the last Blockbuster?
Yeah. And I watched it. And it's a great documentary.
Yeah.
I recommend it. It's very sweet. It's about the manager and her family and how her family is a Blockbuster family, and all of her kids and all of her kids' friends and all of her nieces and nephews all worked at Blockbuster. And now she's a media star because there's all kinds of stories about this last store. So I'm going to show you something which is particularly entertaining for us.
What was once the largest video rental chain in the U.S. with thousands of locations will soon be down to just one little store, where Bend, Oregon is a place, is home to what could be the last Blockbuster in the country. The company closed nearly all of its stores after going bankrupt back in 2010. Jamie Yucca shows us how people from all over the world are traveling to Bend, or maybe the country, traveling to Bend for a piece of Americana.
In its heyday, there were close to 9,000 Blockbuster stores worldwide.
So this is Jamie Yuccas, who we used to work with in Fort Myers.
That's right.
At the TV station. And she did a segment for CBS This Morning about the last Blockbuster. And she appears in the documentary.
And this Blockbuster still exists.
Still exists, yep. At the end, so the documentary, I believe, was 2022. And as of the end of it, they had just renewed their contract with, I believe, Viacom or some like giant corporation that's still allowing them to use the name.
That's pretty awesome. I mean, there are places just like record stores now that still have like I think Kim's Video came back in New York, which was
really?
one of the biggest, most eclectic collection in the world.
Yeah.
In New York City. Someone purchased that, and now they've created it again.
I mean, I think people like. Especially it's a ebb and flow with these sorts of things. People want a little bit more personal experience. Like, we're so sucked into these algorithms that we're just narrowing our focus and we're not seeing outside of ourselves anymore. We don't have a random, high school Blockbuster employee saying, you need to watch this. It's really good.
See, I would do that unsolicited. I'd be standing in my aisle and tell somebody, oh man, you got to check this out. And basically, I'm like, if they're holding this one film, I'm like, no. Come over here. Take this instead.
And that's the essential appeal of Blockbuster. At this point, it's nostalgia. It's about a time before cell phones, a time before we knew everything about everything. We couldn't look up everything on Internet Movie Database and see whether it has this or that or fits into what I already know about myself and what I like. It was new every time.
Yeah, no, I mean, I loved going to the there was times, the reason why I asked before about how long it took, you'd see people kind of indecision. There'd be times I go to the Blockbuster maybe once or twice a week and come out with nothing.
Mm-hmm. People don't even know what late fees are because streaming is, a subscription.
Now you just forget about your subscription and just keep getting charged for it, even though you're not using it for years on end. So final thoughts, anything to leave us out on?
Blockbuster was fun. It was a fun job. I liked it. I did it for 2 years. I only left because I was done school.
I don't know if I miss Blockbuster so much, but I miss the experience of going to the video store.
Video rental store, yeah.
Yeah. I like the anarchy of my mom and pop a little better.
Yeah.
It had beaded curtains, but Blockbuster was one of the first times I think that it meant something to be able to achieve it.
Yeah.
To be able to have that independence, just go rent and watch whatever you wanted.
Whatever you want.
Yeah.
Unless it was X-rated.
Which you couldn't find there.
No, you couldn't.
All right. Well, this has been David.
And Cheryl.
And the 90s. And we'll see you next time. Remember, be kind and rewind. Got a favorite 90s moment or topic you want us to dive into? We'd love to hear about it. If you think we got everything wrong, we'd love to hear about that too. Drop us an email at andthe90spod@gmail.com, link in the episode description, and you can be damn sure that we'll read your comments on the show. Also, if you're digging the show, please rate, comment, subscribe, and tell everyone you know to check us out. It really does make a difference. Till next time, remember, we're nostalgia for the olds and education for the youths.